Yesterday, I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today, I'm wise, so I'm going to change me. Rumi. I was born in 1987 into a transitional society in a rapidly changing world. I was this curious, outspoken little black girl who was born into a political family, and I was just happy. I carry in my DNA the tension between the grief and the new opportunities that filled the air at the end of apartheid. I knew from early on that I was that child who would carry the hopes of my family and my parents on my shoulders. I was raised by my parents and by my grandparents, and as my mom's first child, I had the gift of being showered with love and care. It didn't matter that the world was a mean and terrifying place out there. In my grandmother's kitchen, there was warmth and there was love. More than anything, there was good food. My aunts and uncles, they'd be in and out of the house and they'd be always talking about like serious things, but they do it with the same energy that they talk about the light-hearted things. My home was a carefree environment. Well, that was until my grandfather came home. You see, my grandfather, he was like a stern, strict man. And many people were intimidated by him. But I wasn't. To me, he was just my grandfather. Like me, he's very, very talkative. So I would just spend my days just talking to him and learning from him. He taught me so much because he was this intelligent man who was well-read and well-traveled, and it felt like he knew everything. Every time I asked him a question, he had an answer. But I guess that wasn't hard to do given the fact that I was a little girl, right? He taught me about culture, about South African politics, about history. He also taught me like weird things like how to play poker and how to grow my own food. You see, he was preparing me for the world out there. I was going to change the world, and he was giving me the tools I needed to do so. Now, if my grandparents sparked a desire for me to change the world, then my parents fueled it. My parents, well, they're about as different as two people can be. My mom, a brilliant academic, she led me into books. She believed that any answer to any question that life will throw at me can be found between the pages of a good book. Whereas my dad, the creative, he believed that self-discovery and adventure would give me all of the answers that I needed. Armed with all of these tools, I was ready and sure that I was going to change the world. Apartheid ended, and my ability to do so expanded. I was this 8-year-old child star with a blossoming career. In fact, I think I signed my first autograph at the age of 8. And so for me, the path was clear. I was going to change the world using media and storytelling. In fact, I was going to be the next Oprah. Or so I thought. 20 years later, after a brief interaction with female farmers from across the continent, I changed my mind and my career. Now, I'd like you to imagine something. Imagine how painful it must be to go to bed hungry, all while growing food in your backyard. How do you even reconcile that? As I listened to these women crying, I was reminded of an encounter in my grandparents' kitchen. See, my grandmother, she used to harvest and cook the leaves from a butternut squash. She'd cook it like we cook spinach today. And then she'd say to me, Tsolo, we'll never go hungry. You know why? Because we know how to grow our own food. And yet there I was, sitting in a room full of women who couldn't afford to feed their families, all while growing food in their backyard. In that moment, their pain became my pain. I didn't want to tell their stories and advocate for them like Oprah would. No, actually, I wanted to change their narrative completely. I wanted to solve the problem. Just like that, I knew how I was going to change the world. I was going to end world hunger. Oh, yes. Ish, but wait. I didn't know anything about agriculture. I had no experience, no knowledge. So, you know what? Instead of being helpless, I decided that I would ask for help. Help to change me. And so I asked Google for help. Google led me to YouTube, and then YouTube led me to 400 gigs worth of video content that I watched over the span of 4 months. Ladies and gentlemen, I watched more YouTube and read more journal articles in that 4 months than I ever have in my life. But with that knowledge, I was confident. You know, when you understand something, it gives you like the confidence to move, right? And so move I did. I used the degree I had in international relations to open doors for me in the policy space. Because of course, if you're going to change the world, you must do it through policy, right? Yeah, right? Yeah. Speak truth to power. Yes. Amandla! Yeah. Look, I don't know if I was like hopeful or just plain naive. Because, okay, policies, yeah, they work. Yeah, they do work. However, let's be honest, they work slowly. But people were dying of hunger. I didn't have the time to wait for politics or even the politricks to play themselves out. In fact, no. I needed change, and I needed change now. I finally realized what my grandparents had been trying to teach me all this time. You see, it became personal. And then I recognized in that moment that for change to occur, it needs to be as personal as it is communal. For change to occur, it needs to be as personal as it is communal. You see, if the problem isn't personal, then the solution is optional. My grandparents, they didn't speak truth to power. No, they made a conscious decision that they would solve the problem. My grandparents decided that they would raise children and grandchildren who would see the world differently. So if I had any hope of actually making a change, I needed to see the world a little more like they did. I needed to be agile, maybe even innovative. After all, innovation gives us alternatives to monopolies that already exist. But what does innovation really mean? I struggled with that for a while. I struggled because innovation, like all of these other buzzwords, has been chopped and changed and manipulated to suit the branding requirements of big business, right? And so the concept in and of itself just felt foreign to me. So the question then became, what does it mean, really, to be innovative in Africa? You know, guys, to be quite honest, I don't really know if we were ever really poor. Because when I was growing up, my parents and my grandparents made sure that everything that they gave me looked and felt like the best thing in the world. But that's what innovation is, right? At its core, innovation is like solving this problem, but doing so in a way that allows for people's quality of life to improve. And also doing it in a way where they get to retain their humanity, their dignity. I know there are people who are probably clicking on this YouTube link going, innovation must be disruptive and it must be contextual and it must be viable, scalable. Yeah, I hear you. You're right. Yes, you're right. Innovation must be all of those things as well. But all of those characteristics need to fall secondary to human dignity. Innovation changes the way people live. Yes, innovation can bring about large systematic change, but for innovation to actually be successful, what it has to do is change how communities live. In my journey, I've actually learned that innovation begins by changing the innovator. Innovation in and of itself is actually a process of becoming. So, if I wanted to change the world, then I needed to surrender to the process of becoming. I needed to hit rock bottom, then face all of my fears, then try to see the world like my dad taught me. You can teach anyone a skill, anyone. In fact, you can even teach people techniques that will help them perfect that skill. But innovation is more than that. Innovation actually requires courage. Innovation requires imagination, vulnerability, grit. Innovation needs you to be able to see things that aren't as though they were. That's where the superpower is. Because all of innovation is peppered with imagination. Let me give you an example. There's a man, an innovator, a friend of mine called Lufefe Nonjama. Some of us know him as the Spinach King. At one of the worst times in his life, with only 40 Rand in his pocket, he decided to invest that 40 Rand into growing spinach. Now, I'm a farmer, and for me, even that's a far reach. 40 Rand is like what, $2.50? But he grew the spinach. And then instead of selling the spinach in terms of primary agriculture, what he did was he agro-processed. So he dehydrated the spinach and he turned it into spinach flour. And then he went on to experiment with recipes, and now he's got one of the fastest growing gluten-free brands in the country because he makes spinach bread, spinach wraps, spinach loaves, spinach buns, spinach mixes, you name it, he's got it. But when he started, he didn't even have an oven. He had to ask his neighbors for permission to bake overnight so that he could sell the bread the next morning. Look, as an innovator, yeah, he broke the mold or he thought out of the box. But the truth of the matter is, he allowed himself to be changed first. He allowed himself to see the world differently so that where others saw problems, he brought about solutions. Look, I don't know you. I don't know any of you. And I don't even know what you see. But you know what I know for sure? That there's an innovator inside of you. Maybe you don't want to change food systems like I do. Heck, maybe you don't even want to change any systems. Maybe what you need to do is to bring more joy into the world. Or maybe you're the guy we've all been waiting for who's going to create the first flying car. Hello? Whatever it is. I challenge you to look within. Look around you. Understand your context. And be the change that we need to see. Thank you.